This happened about 2 years ago, and even now, I still get a little uneasy thinking about it. It was supposed to be just another weekend hangout with my friends. Nothing out of the ordinary. The plan was simple. Hit the mall, shop a bit, grab food, and head home. You know, standard stuff. It was me, my best friend Kara, and her younger brother Jake. We were wandering through some clothing store, laughing at the ridiculous outfits on display and making dumb jokes, when this guy, I swear he came out of nowhere, walked up to us. He looked like he was in his late 30s, wearing this worn-out jacket that didn't quite fit right, and jeans that looked like they had seen better days. His face didn't strike me as threatening at first. Just tired, maybe a little too serious for a day at the mall. "Hey," he said, smiling in this awkward way that made me instantly uncomfortable. "Sorry to bother you, but my car broke down outside. Think you could give me a ride home after you're done here?" Now, I've seen enough sketchy stuff online to know that strangers asking for rides is usually a red flag. Kara gave me a quick glance, her expression mirroring my unease, but she still managed to be polite. Sorry, we're not heading that way." "No worries," the guy replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He didn't push, which was good, but he didn't leave either. He lingered, just standing there for a few moments too long before he finally turned and started pretending to browse through some shirts nearby. Jake leaned in and whispered, "That was weird, right?" "Yeah, super weird," I muttered, trying to keep my voice low. We shrugged it off, assuming he'd move on. But he didn't. For the next 20 minutes, every time I glanced around, there he was. He wasn't doing anything outright creepy, just always nearby, always within sight. The vibe was off, and I could tell we were all starting to feel it. Jake suggested we leave, but Kara shook her head. If he's waiting for us to leave, that's exactly what he wants. We decided to wait him out. We lingered in the store, making small talk with the cashier and pretending to be more interested in overpriced clothes than we really were. Time dragged. Every few minutes, one of us would casually glance toward the entrance, and yep, he was still there, lurking near the door like he was waiting for something. Or someone. By now, the whole situation had shifted from weird to straight up unsettling. My heart was starting to pound, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was about to happen. Kara eventually said what we were all thinking. "We should call mall security." I was hesitant at first. Technically the guy hadn't done anything illegal, but better safe than sorry, right? Kara made the call, and we waited by the cashier until a security guard showed up. He was this older guy with a friendly face who didn't seem too concerned when we explained the situation. "Let's go take a look," he said, motioning for us to follow him. We stepped outside together, and for the first time in over an hour, I actually felt a little relieved. The guy was nowhere to be seen. The guard did a quick sweep of the area and assured us we were fine. Probably just someone looking for help. Happens all the time. We thanked him, and after a few more minutes of hesitation, we decided it was safe to leave. I remember laughing nervously as we made our way to the parking lot, trying to shake off the tension that had built up. But as we approached Kara's car, my stomach dropped. Standing by the back bumper, partially hidden by another vehicle, was the man. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was blank, his eyes fixed on us. No one said a word. We just froze. For what felt like forever, we stood there, caught between wanting to run and not wanting to draw attention. Finally, the man took a step forward, slow, deliberate. "Let's go," Kara whispered urgently, yanking her keys from her pocket. We bolted to the car, practically diving in as she started the engine. As we sped out of the parking lot, I glanced back and saw him standing in the same spot, watching us leave. He didn't try to follow. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. Even now, I wonder what his deal was. Was he actually just someone in need, and we overreacted? Or was there something more sinister going on that day? I don't know. And honestly, I don't think I want to know. It was supposed to be a quiet week. My husband, Matt, had to leave town for work, a business trip, some deal in another state. I always get a little nervous when he's away, but it's never really that big of a deal. It's just me and the dog. Nothing to worry about, right? The first couple of nights were fine. I'd curl up on the couch with some Netflix and snacks, the kind of nights you dream about when you're busy with work or life. Just me, some junk food, and the dog, who'd curl up at my feet and snore through whatever I was watching. Nothing to suggest anything was off, at least not at first. But by the third night, I started hearing it. At first, I thought I was imagining it, just the wind maybe, or the house settling. But it was faint, like someone knocking at the door. 3 quick raps, followed by silence. I froze, my hand hovering over the TV remote, and listened. Nothing. Just the usual quiet of a late night. I chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me, locked the door, and went to bed. The next night, it happened again. This time, I got up to check. I peered through the peephole, expecting to see a neighbor or maybe a delivery guy, though I couldn't think of anything that'd be getting delivered at 2 a.m. But there was no one there, just the empty porch, dimly lit by the street lamp across the road. I shrugged it off and went back to bed. Then, on the 4th night, it happened again. But this time, I noticed something different. I woke up to the same soft knock, but as I listened, something felt off. The knock wasn't hurried. It was methodical. There was a pause between each knock, a long one, like someone was taking their time. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I crept to the window, careful not to make any noise, and peeked through the blinds. No one. Just the empty, dark porch. But this time, I saw something I hadn't before. A shadow near the edge of the porch, right where the door meets the frame. I don't know why, but my heart started racing. I could feel my breath getting shallow, a knot forming in my stomach. I pulled the blinds back into place slowly and backed away from the window. I was shaking now. It didn't make sense. Why was someone knocking in the middle of the night and just standing there afterward? That's when I decided it was time to tell Matt. The next day I called him while he was at his conference. Hey, something weird has been happening. I don't want to freak you out, but I think someone's been knocking on the door every night. It's weird, like they just stand there for a while. I don't know. I'm probably just being paranoid, but I don't feel comfortable. Matt immediately told me not to worry, that I should lock the doors and stay inside. I know he meant well, but I could hear the stress in his voice, and that only made me more on edge. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The knock came again, just like before, but this time, I didn't check the door or the window. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the wall, the knock echoing in my ears. After what felt like hours, I sent a text to Matt. I'm going to my parents for the rest of the week. It felt safer there, or at least I thought it would be. When Matt came home, we both agreed it was time to talk to the neighbors. The Johnsons lived across the street, and we'd never really spoken to them much. But they had a security system, so we figured it was worth asking. We knocked on their door, and Mrs. Johnson opened it with a warm smile, though I could tell she was surprised to see us. "Everything okay?" she asked. I explained the situation, about the knocking, about the unease, about how I felt like something just wasn't right. Mrs. Johnson's eyes widened, and she looked over her shoulder. "You should see the footage," she said. "We have cameras around the house." I didn't think much of it at first, but then she pulled up the footage, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. Each night, just like I'd said, there was a figure standing by our door. It was hard to make out his face, but he was always wearing dark clothing, and there was something in his hand, a knife, glinting in the light. He would knock, wait, then leave without ever turning on the porch light. It was chilling. I couldn't stop staring at the screen, my breath getting shallow again. My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything. But the footage wasn't enough to get a clear ID on him. His face was always in shadow, and the camera couldn't capture enough detail to help the police. I felt helpless. Mrs. Johnson gave us the footage on a USB stick, and we immediately took it to the police. But when they reviewed it, they confirmed what we already knew. The guy's face was obscured. There was nothing they could do. The officer said it could be anyone, a stranger who knew how to stay in the darkness. But the thing that really bothered me was that the guy hadn't come around at all after Matt came home. He only came when I was alone. I don't know if he knew I was by myself, or if it was just coincidence, but there was something about the way he moved, the way he knocked, that made it feel like he was playing some sick game. And the knife. Why the knife? We installed cameras around our house the next day just to be sure. I still can't shake the feeling that he's out there, lurking somewhere, waiting for another chance to show up. I don't know who he is, what he wants, or why he targeted me. Maybe I'll never know, but I'm glad nothing happened. For now. I never really thought much about the small, everyday moments that could somehow spiral into something you'll never forget. You know, the times when everything seems fine, and then, suddenly, you find yourself in a situation that leaves you questioning everything. It started that evening like any other. I'd been feeling burnt out from work all week, and I just needed to blow off some steam. So I decided to hit up a local bar. It wasn't much, just a cozy little dive on the corner of a quiet street. Nothing fancy, just a place to sip a drink and relax without thinking about anything for a while. The place was fairly empty, just a few regulars scattered at the bar, the low hum of conversation in the background. I grabbed a seat by the window and ordered a gin and tonic. Honestly, I was just there for the quiet, the low lighting, and the calming vibe. I wasn't looking to meet anyone, wasn't in the mood to chat with strangers. But there was this guy. He was sitting a couple of seats down from me, drinking a beer and staring at me. At first I thought maybe he was just glancing my way casually, you know? People do that. No big deal. But after a while, it started to feel different. His gaze didn't waver. It was like he was studying me. I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy, but I shrugged it off. Maybe he just liked what he saw. I could handle that. Eventually, he got up and made his way over. My heart rate picked up just a little, but I told myself I was being silly. He was just a guy, probably trying to strike up a conversation. So, when he stopped in front of me, I was ready to be polite. He smiled, but there was something off about it. It wasn't a warm smile, more like a forced one. "Hey," he said, looking at me with this intense look in his eyes. "You got a boyfriend?" I was a bit thrown off. The question felt so direct, almost invasive. But I smiled anyway, hoping it would stay lighthearted. No boyfriend," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Then, without any real preamble, he asked, "Can I get your number?" Now, I don't know why, but something in the way he asked it rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't casual or smooth, more like a demand than a request. His voice was flat, as if he wasn't even interested in a real conversation. "Just the number. That's it." I didn't hesitate, but I didn't want to encourage him either. "Sorry, I'm not interested," I said, trying to sound firm but not rude. I smiled to soften the refusal, but he didn't smile back. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I stayed at the bar for a little while longer, trying to shake off the weird vibe that lingered. But after a bit, I decided it was time to head home. I wasn't in the mood to stay out any longer. The whole encounter with the guy left me feeling unsettled, like something had been off about the whole thing. The bar was just a short walk from my apartment, so I didn't mind the walk. It was a cool evening, not too cold, and the streets were quiet. I slipped my phone into my pocket and started making my way down the sidewalk. But then, a few minutes in, I got that feeling. You know the one, the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, that strange sensation that someone is watching you. I couldn't shake it, no matter how much I told myself it was nothing. I kept walking, trying to ignore it. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Not the casual shuffle of someone walking in the same direction, but purposeful steps. I glanced over my shoulder. My heart skipped when I saw him. It was the guy from the bar. He was walking just a few paces behind me, too close for comfort, but not enough to make it obvious that he was following me. I felt my stomach drop, and panic rose in my chest. What did he want? Why was he following me? I quickened my pace, trying to walk a little faster without making it obvious. I turned a corner, hoping to shake him off, but when I did, I glanced back. There he was, still there, keeping the same distance. My pulse quickened, my thoughts racing. I turned the next corner, my mind a mess. I was so focused on the man behind me that I wasn't looking where I was going until I almost ran into a woman unlocking her car. She looked at me surprised. I didn't stop to explain everything, but I could tell by my face that I was panicking. Without a second thought, I blurted out, "There's a guy. He's following me, please. I need help." Her expression softened, and she opened the door to her car. "Get in, quick." I didn't hesitate. I scrambled into the car, feeling like I could finally breathe again. We sat there in silence for a moment, the engine purring softly. I peeked through the car window and saw the man from the bar walking past, his eyes scanning the street. My heart was in my throat. When he passed and didn't look in our direction, I exhaled in relief. The woman turned to me and said, "You okay?" "Yeah, I think so," I replied, still trying to calm my nerves. I don't know why he was following me. It's just so weird." She nodded, starting the engine. "You should be careful. People can be strange." I nodded, the tension starting to ease a little. The woman drove me home, and I thanked her a dozen times as I got out of the car. She gave me a kind smile before driving off into the night. As I watched her car disappear down the street, I couldn't help but think about the guy. What was he really after? Was it just a case of someone being too forward, or was there something darker in his intentions? I'll never know for sure. But I do know this. There's a reason you trust your gut. I'm just glad I listened to mine that night. I was just trying to get a few things for dinner, nothing too exciting. It was one of those normal, busy afternoons, with the sun beating down and the grocery store air conditioning blasting just enough to make me feel comfortable. I had my son with me, as usual. He was busy pestering me about getting some candy, and I was pretending not to hear him. We were just moving along, aisle to aisle, picking up ingredients for a simple stew. The kind of meal that makes you feel like a responsible adult for about 5 minutes before you realize you forgot to buy anything for dessert. Anyway, we were at the store. I was down the pasta aisle, checking the prices on some spaghetti when I noticed him. The man. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was a bit scruffy, sure. Rough clothes, unkempt hair, a layer of dirt on his face like he hadn't seen a shower in a while. But this wasn't unusual. I mean, I've seen my fair share of people who seem to be struggling with life, and they don't all make me feel weird. But this guy, something about him stood out. He was staring directly at me. It wasn't a quick glance, like most people do when they're in a store, looking at products or scanning the shelves. No, this was intense. He wasn't even pretending to look at anything else. His eyes were locked onto me, and for some reason, that made my stomach twist. I felt a flicker of unease, but brushed it off. I mean, who was I kidding? I had a million things on my mind, and this guy wasn't my problem. I moved to the next aisle. Maybe he was just some guy who happened to be looking in my direction. So I focused on my son, trying to quiet his whining about the candy. I'd barely turned my back when I caught him again. This time, I could see him from the corner of my eye as I checked out the vegetable section. He was still there, standing at the end of the aisle, just watching me. Okay, this wasn't normal. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and my heart started to race a little. I turned toward my son and forced a smile, hoping the guy wasn't watching me get freaked out. I pushed the cart quickly to the next aisle, thinking, maybe I'm just overreacting. I'm being paranoid. But then I heard it. The voice. His voice. I was just picking up some onions when I turned to my left and froze. There he was, suddenly right next to me. And he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was bent down, talking to my son. I didn't even have time to think, just an instinctive rush of anger and fear. I marched right over, my pulse pounding in my ears. My voice was shaky when I asked, "What are you saying to my son?" The man stiffened. His eyes met mine, and for a split second I thought he was going to say something to calm the situation down, but no. Instead, he gave me a tight-lipped smile, and then, without a word, turned and walked off. I watched him retreat into the next aisle, barely even sparing a glance at us as he turned the corner. I grabbed my son's hand and pulled him toward the end of the aisle, away from the guy, my mind racing. My hands were trembling, but I tried to keep it together. "Mom, what did he say?" my son asked innocently, his voice laced with confusion. I glanced at him, my heart hammering in my chest. "What did he say to you?" I demanded. He shrugged and said, "He asked me if I wanted to go play outside." My blood ran cold. I did what anyone would do in that situation. I told everything to the store security. They didn't waste any time. The manager was on it immediately. I gave them a full description of the guy. They asked if I wanted to file a report, And I said yes, of course. I didn't even think twice about it, but I didn't have time to process what was happening. Without thinking, I grabbed my son's arm a little harder than I meant to and started walking as fast as I could toward the front of the store. My mind was spinning. Had this guy seriously just tried to lure my child away? I couldn't understand what had just happened. I didn't care about groceries anymore. I didn't care about anything but getting the hell out of there. We made it to the exit, and I pulled my son into the parking lot, practically dragging him along. My breath was shallow, and I could still feel my hands shaking. What had that man been thinking? What was his plan? My heart was racing, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to cry, scream, or just get the hell out of there. I didn't feel safe until we were halfway home, and I could finally breathe again. But the thought of that man's smile, it stuck with me. Later that day, the police came to the store to check the footage. I remember sitting there in my car, looking out the window at the store entrance, waiting for some kind of closure, some confirmation that I had done the right thing. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the scene. Then, a few weeks later, I saw him again. On TV. The man had been arrested. He had tried to abduct several kids in the area over the past few weeks, and the police had been hunting for him. They didn't catch him until he made a move on the wrong kid. I nearly threw up when I saw his face on the screen. It was him. The same guy. The one who had been staring at me in the store, who had been talking to my son. I can't stop thinking about it. Was he watching me from the start? Had he picked us on purpose? Was I just another target for him? And what did he mean when he said to my son, "Want to go play outside?" What kind of person says that to a kid? I still don't have answers, and I'm not sure I ever will. But one thing's for sure, I'm never taking my son to that supermarket again. I'll stick to the online orders from now on. This happened a few years ago when a couple of friends and I decided to hit up this big outlet mall about an hour away from where we lived. Nothing too crazy, just a little day trip, shopping, hanging out, maybe grabbing lunch afterward. The weather was perfect. We had a good playlist going in the car, and everything felt normal. You know, just one of those carefree days where nothing could go wrong. We got there around noon, and after wandering in and out of a few stores, we found ourselves at this outdoor seating area near a food court. We were chatting, joking around, debating which sneakers were worth buying when this guy, maybe mid-40s, baseball cap, plain looking, comes over. He wasn't creepy looking or anything, just one of those guys you don't really think twice about. He starts making small talk. "Hey, you guys from around here?" "No, just visiting," my friend Liz answers politely. "Ah, cool. Nice place, huh? You staying nearby?" I remember giving him a quick glance because the question felt oddly specific, but Liz, being her usual friendly self, just shrugged and said, "Not too far." He smiled, nodded, and walked off. Weird, but not that weird. People make small talk all the time, right? Still, something about it felt a little off. The way he asked where we were staying stuck with me, but I didn't say anything because I figured I was overthinking it. About 10 minutes later, we decided to check out more shops. We were walking toward this big sports store when another person, this time a woman, approached us. She looked like she was in her late 30s, dressed pretty casually, holding a smoothie. She started with almost the exact same line. "You guys from around here?" We exchanged a quick look, and Liz, clearly less enthusiastic this time, answered, "Just visiting." "Oh, nice," the woman said, taking a sip of her drink. Staying for long? Now it felt weird. Like, really weird. Why was someone else asking the same thing? It was the phrasing, the tone, almost like she was following a script. We gave vague answers, trying to be polite but also wanting to end the conversation. Eventually, she just smiled and walked away, but we were all feeling a little uneasy. "Okay, that was strange," Liz said, voicing what we were all thinking. "Maybe it's nothing," I offered, though I didn't believe it. 2 people asking the same weirdly specific questions within 10 minutes? That couldn't be a coincidence. We tried to shake it off, but things didn't get any better. Every now and then we'd catch glimpses of the guy or the woman, not directly following us, but always nearby, always watching. By now, the mood had shifted completely. No more carefree laughs or window shopping. We just wanted to get out of there. We headed back toward the parking lot, moving quickly but trying not to make it obvious. That's when we noticed her. A third person, this time an older woman, was standing near the exit, not shopping, just waiting. She caught sight of us, and I swear, there was this slight nod she gave in the direction of the guy from earlier. "Keep walking," I muttered to my friends. My heart was racing, and I could tell they felt it too. We didn't stop, didn't look around. We made a beeline for the car. Once we were inside, I locked the doors immediately, and Liz turned to look behind us. "They're watching us," she whispered. Sure enough, the guy and the woman from earlier were standing near the entrance, talking to the older woman. They weren't chasing us or anything, but they were just standing there, staring. Liz started the car, and we drove out of the lot as quickly as we could without drawing attention. The whole ride back was dead silent, except for the occasional, "What the hell was that?" from one of us. We kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a car following us, but there was nothing. We never figured out what their deal was. Were they trying to rob us? Kidnap us? Or was it something else entirely? It's been years, and I still think about that day. The way they coordinated, the way they seemed to test us. It felt deliberate, like they were playing some kind of twisted game. I guess we'll never know, but one thing's for sure. I'm a lot more careful about who I talk to in public now. And I never go back to that outlet mall. Ever. I still don't know if I overreacted that night or if we narrowly escaped something worse. It was supposed to be a simple overnight bus trip, 12 hours across 3 states. My boyfriend, Ethan, and I were heading back from a long weekend with friends, and the plan was to sleep through most of the ride. You know how it is with these cheap overnight buses. Uncomfortable seats, dim lighting, and that faint smell of diesel mixed with stale air. We boarded around midnight. It wasn't crowded, maybe 15 passengers in total. We found seats near the back, settled in, and pulled out our headphones. I remember feeling weirdly excited. It was one of those moments that feel like an adventure, even though you're just doing something mundane. About an hour in, I noticed him. He was sitting 3 rows ahead on the opposite side, an older guy, probably mid-60s. Nothing unusual at first glance, just another tired traveler. Except he kept turning his head slightly, glancing back at us. Not in a casual way, more like studying us. I nudged Ethan and whispered, "That guy's being weird." Ethan shrugged. "Probably bored. Just ignore him." So I tried. But every few minutes, there he was, sneaking another look. I brushed it off. Maybe he thought he recognized us or something. Around 2 a.m., the bus stopped at a tiny rest area. Most of the passengers got out to stretch their legs. Ethan and I stayed inside, too tired to move. That's when things got stranger. The man stood by the door facing our seats. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, too close for comfort, looking down the aisle toward us. I glanced at Ethan, who raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. "He's probably just stretching," Ethan muttered under his breath. The guy eventually stepped off the bus, and I felt a weird wave of relief, like we'd dodged something. But when the passengers started filing back in, I saw him again. He was holding his phone up, and for a split second, I swear I saw the camera pointed directly at us. "Did you see that?" I hissed at Ethan. "See what?" "He was taking pictures of us." Ethan leaned forward, trying to catch the man's eye, but the guy quickly turned away and sat down in his seat, facing forward like nothing happened. "Maybe it was nothing," Ethan said, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. For the next hour, I couldn't relax. I kept glancing at him, half expecting him to turn around again. The bus was quiet, except for the low hum of the engine and the occasional cough from another passenger. The whole thing was starting to feel off. Too quiet. Too tense. At the next rest stop, we decided to get off for some fresh air. The moment we stepped out, I felt it. He was following us. He didn't say anything, didn't get too close, but he was always there, lingering just within earshot. I could see the screen of his phone lit up as he held it low by his side, the camera app still open. "Okay, this is getting creepy," Ethan muttered, glancing over his shoulder. We moved toward the vending machines, pretending to browse, hoping he'd lose interest. But he didn't. He just stood a few feet away, staring off into the distance like he wasn't paying attention. Except we both knew he was. "We can't stay out here," I whispered. "Let's get back on the bus." We climbed back aboard, this time choosing seats closer to the front, hoping he wouldn't follow. But a minute later, he walked in and sat down right behind us. Neither of us said anything, but I could feel Ethan tense beside me. "No cell signal," he whispered, checking his phone. "We'll just wait it out. A few more hours, and we'll be at the station." I nodded, but my heart was pounding. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept expecting him to do something, to stand up, to speak, I don't know, do whatever it was he was planning. Finally, as dawn broke, the bus pulled into the station. We grabbed our bags and bolted off without looking back. I didn't even care if we looked paranoid. I just wanted to be away from him. When we were safely inside the terminal, I glanced back through the glass doors. He was still on the bus, sitting in his seat, staring straight ahead. He never followed us. He never even got off. "Do you think he was just messing with us?" I asked Ethan later. "I don't know. Maybe." He paused. "Or maybe we were supposed to be his next stop." I still think about that man sometimes, wondering what his deal was. Maybe he was just a lonely old guy looking for attention. Or maybe we avoided something worse by staying cautious. I guess I'll never know. But one thing's for sure, I'm sticking to daytime travel from now on. I remember that day so vividly, even though it happened years ago. I was 13, just another regular school day. I wasn't thinking about anything serious, mostly about what snacks I'd grab once I got home and whether I had enough time to finish my homework before my favorite show came on. You know, the kind of stuff that feels so important when you're that age. The walk home from school wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes tops, and I liked doing it alone. It gave me a chance to daydream or hum whatever song was stuck in my head. That day, the sun was still pretty high in the sky, and there was this warm breeze that made the leaves rustle. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. As I walked down our quiet street, I noticed a black car parked a little way ahead. I didn't think much of it at first, just a regular sedan, nothing fancy. I figured someone was either waiting for someone or had stopped to check something on their phone. Pretty typical, right? When I got closer though, the car's window rolled down and a man inside leaned out slightly. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. He had this friendly enough expression, but there was something off about it, like he was trying too hard to seem casual. He smiled and said, "Hey there, you're Oliver's kid, right?" Hearing my dad's name caught me off guard. I stopped in my tracks, my brain trying to catch up with what was happening. "Yeah," I said hesitantly. I didn't recognize him at all. "Your dad asked me to pick you up today," he continued, nodding toward the passenger seat. "Hop in, I'll get you home safe." Now, I may have been young, but I wasn't completely clueless. My parents had drilled it into my head not to talk to strangers, let alone get into a car with one. Still, hearing my dad's name threw me off. It made the whole thing feel almost believable. Almost. I glanced around, suddenly aware of how empty the street felt. No other kids, no cars driving by, nothing. Just me, this man, and his car. My heart started to pound a little harder. I don't think my dad mentioned anything about that," I said, taking a small step back. "I can just walk." He gave me that overly reassuring smile again. "He must have forgotten to tell you. Don't worry, I know your house. Come on, it's hot out." Something wasn't right. Even though he sounded calm, there was this tension underneath his words, like he was getting impatient. My gut screamed at me to get away, but my feet felt glued to the pavement. It was that weird mix of fear and confusion. You don't want to believe something bad is happening, but every instinct is telling you it is. Before I could decide what to do, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw our neighbor from a few doors down. She was holding her toddler's hand, walking back from the school's daycare. "Hey, sweetie," she called out, her voice bright and familiar. Relief washed over me like a wave. The man in the car immediately straightened up, his smile disappearing for a split second before he forced it back on. "Oh, hi," he said, a little too loudly. "I was just offering her a ride home. I'm a friend of her dad's." She gave him a polite but skeptical nod. "That's kind of you, but I'm headed that way too. She can walk with us." I didn't wait for any more invitations. I hurried over to her side, my heart still racing. The man didn't say anything else. He just gave a quick wave and drove off, the car disappearing around the corner. As soon as he was gone, she crouched down a little, her face level with mine. "Do you know that man?" she asked softly. I shook my head, feeling a little shaky now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "He said he knew my dad, but I've never seen him before." She frowned, her grip tightening on her child's hand. "Let's get you home, honey, and we'll tell your parents what happened." The rest of the walk was quiet, except for her occasionally glancing over her shoulder, as if she was making sure the car wasn't following us. When we got to my house, she waited until I was safely inside before leaving. I remember my mom's face when I told her what happened, the mix of fear and anger. She called my dad right away, and they both agreed to report it to the police. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man's face, smiling too much, his eyes a little too sharp. I kept wondering, how did he know my dad's name? Was he really a stranger, or was there something else going on? My parents never found out who he was. The police said they'd keep an eye out, but nothing ever came of it. Even now, years later, I think about that day sometimes. What if Mrs. Thompson hadn't shown up when she did? What if I'd believed him and gotten in that car? It's a scary thought, one that makes my skin crawl even now. The weirdest part is that I never saw that car again. In a neighborhood as small as ours, you'd think someone would have noticed a black sedan hanging around. But it was like he vanished into thin air. I guess I'll never know who he was or what he wanted. But one thing's for sure. That day taught me to trust my instincts, no matter how innocent something might seem at first. Sometimes, it's the people who seem the friendliest who have the most dangerous intentions. It started like any other boring weekday afternoon. I was heading home after spending hours at a cramped library, trying to finish up a paper for class. Honestly, I was more interested in grabbing a bite to eat and taking a long nap than stressing over citations and formatting. The bus stop wasn't too crowded, just a couple of older folks and a woman with a toddler clinging to her leg. I plugged in my headphones and leaned against the metal pole, waiting for the bus to show up. When it finally pulled in, I snagged a seat near the middle, by the window on the left side. You know, one of those seats where two people sit next to each other, and there's another pair of seats directly across the aisle. I usually avoid sitting too close to anyone, but today, luck seemed to be on my side. The seat next to me was empty, and so was the one in front. The only other person nearby was a woman sitting diagonally across from me on the right row. She looked to be in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, with a kind of no-nonsense vibe. She had a book open in her lap, but I noticed she wasn't really reading it, more like flipping pages absent-mindedly. The ride was uneventful at first. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets roll by, half listening to some indie playlist. After about 10 minutes, the bus stopped again, and a few more people climbed on. Among them was this old man, maybe in his 70s. He looked like your typical grandpa. Gray hair, a worn-out coat, and one of those flat caps. Nothing unusual, right? At first, he sat in the seat directly across from me, on the right side of the aisle. I didn't pay him much attention beyond a quick glance, but after a minute or two, I noticed something odd. He kept staring at me. Not in a casual, accidental way, but full-on turning his head to look. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe he was just one of those people who zone out while looking in someone's direction. I shifted in my seat, hoping he'd get the hint, but no. His eyes stayed fixed on me, and it started to make my skin crawl. I could feel the tension building in my chest, like a subtle warning bell going off in my head. I told myself I was overreacting, that he was probably just an eccentric old man with bad manners. Still, I pulled my backpack onto my lap, hugging it like some kind of makeshift shield. Then, things got weirder. Without a word, the old man got up from his seat and moved across the aisle, sitting down right next to me. The bus wasn't even that full. There were plenty of empty seats he could have chosen. My heart rate picked up as I tried to act normal, but inside I was screaming, "Why are you sitting here?" He didn't say anything, just sat there, way too close for comfort. I leaned slightly toward the window, trying to put some space between us. That's when I felt it, his leg pressing against mine. Not an accidental brush or a casual bump from the bus jolting. He was deliberately leaning into me. I shifted further, practically squishing myself against the cold metal of the bus wall. Okay, this was getting beyond uncomfortable. I could feel my palms getting sweaty and my mind was racing through options. Should I say something? Should I get up and move? But I didn't want to make a scene, or worse, escalate things. The woman sitting across from us must have noticed something was off because she kept glancing over, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. Meanwhile, the old man kept up his creepy behavior, his legs still pressing against mine despite my obvious attempts to move away. I was stuck, trapped between him and the window, and every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the woman across from us spoke up, her voice cutting through the low hum of the bus engine. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Her tone was sharp, loud enough to draw the attention of a few other passengers. The old man flinched, but he didn't move right away. Instead, he gave her this weird, almost sheepish smile, as if he'd been caught doing something mildly embarrassing rather than outright creepy. "If you don't back off right now, I'm calling the police," she said, her voice steady but clearly pissed off. That seemed to do the trick. The old man muttered something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, and quickly got up. He shuffled down the aisle toward the door, getting off at the very next stop. As soon as he was gone, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The woman looked at me, her eyes softening a bit. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, though my heart was still pounding in my chest. "Yeah, thanks. That was weird." I didn't know what else to say. Weird didn't even begin to cover it. The rest of the bus ride was quiet. The tension lingered in the air for a while, but eventually things went back to normal, or as normal as they could be after something like that. When my stop came up, I got off and gave the woman a quick nod of thanks before stepping onto the sidewalk. She nodded back, a silent acknowledgement of shared unease. As I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that clung to me. Who was that guy? What did he want? Was he just some harmless old man with no sense of personal space? Or was there something more sinister going on? I kept replaying the incident in my mind, questioning if I should have done something differently, moved seats sooner, spoken up myself instead of waiting for someone else to intervene. Even now, thinking back on it, I can't fully make sense of what happened. All I know is that it left me with a lingering sense of paranoia. Every time I get on a bus now, I can't help but scan the faces of the passengers, wondering if one of them might turn out to be another strange encounter waiting to happen. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a random, unsettling experience that I happened to be in the middle of. But there's a part of me that still wonders, what if that woman hadn't been there? What if I'd been alone on that bus? It's not a thought I like to dwell on for too long. I guess the real horror isn't always in what happens. It's in what could have happened. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and the market was buzzing with life. You could hear the chatter of people haggling over prices, the clatter of metal stalls being rearranged, and the mouth-watering smell of grilled street food wafting through the air. I was out with my friend Mel for what was supposed to be a chill day of browsing vintage trinkets and trying new snacks. Nothing serious, just two friends having a good time. We'd just finished grabbing iced coffees from a stand near the entrance when Mel suddenly nudged me. "That guy's been standing behind us for a while now," she muttered, trying to sound casual. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a tall guy, maybe mid-30s, blending into the crowd but definitely lingering a bit too close for comfort. "He's probably just waiting for his turn," I said with a shrug, not wanting to make a big deal out of nothing. People linger in markets all the time, right? Besides, the guy didn't look particularly threatening, just a little too close. We moved on, laughing about some weird handmade jewelry we found, and eventually I forgot about him. That was until about 20 minutes later when Mel froze. "My bag's gone," she said in a low voice, her eyes wide with panic. I looked at her shoulder where her bag had been hanging, and sure enough, it was missing. "You're sure? Did you leave it at the coffee stand?" I asked, already retracing our steps in my mind. "No, I had it with me after that," she said, her voice shaking now. I think someone took it." We were just about to head towards security when, out of nowhere, the same guy from earlier appeared in front of us. I hadn't even noticed him approaching. He had Mel's bag in his hand, holding it like some kind of prize. "Lose something?" he said, a smirk playing on his lips. Relief washed over Mel's face for a split second before she frowned. "Yeah, that's my bag. Thanks for finding it." She reached out to grab it, but he pulled it back just out of reach. "Hold on," he said, still smiling. But there was something off about it now. "I didn't say I'd give it back for free." "What?" I blurted out, confused. "Have lunch with me," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Just you and me. 1 hour and you get your bag back." I half laughed in disbelief, thinking this had to be some kind of joke. "Are you serious right now?" Mel was visibly uncomfortable, her hand clenched at her side. "Number, just give me my bag," she said, trying to sound assertive, but I could hear the unease in her voice. The guy's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "You don't seem to understand. Either you have lunch with me, or I destroy everything inside this bag. Phone, wallet, keys, all of it." He tilted the bag slightly as if to emphasize how easy it would be. My heart started pounding. This wasn't just some weirdo hitting on Mel. This guy was clearly enjoying the control he had over the situation. "We're not going anywhere with you," I said, stepping closer to Mel. "You can't just steal someone's stuff and blackmail them." He shrugged, completely unfazed. "Your call. But I don't think your friend wants to lose her phone, do you?" For a moment we just stood there, the sounds of the bustling market around us fading into background noise. People walked past, oblivious to what was happening, and I felt this creeping sense of isolation. Mel looked at me, panic flickering in her eyes. We needed a way out of this, fast. Then it hit me. I leaned in and whispered, "Stall him. I have an idea." Mel took a deep breath and turned back to the guy. "Fine, I'll go with you. Just give me my bag first." The guy smiled wider, clearly thinking he'd won. "Ah, no. You walk with me, and then I'll give it back." "Okay," she said, taking a hesitant step forward. That was all the distraction I needed. While they were focused on each other, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, quickly snapping a photo of the guy. Then, loudly enough for him to hear, I said, "Already sent your picture to security. So unless you want the cops involved, I suggest you hand over the bag." His expression changed instantly. The smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by something else, something cold and calculating. For a second, I thought he might still try something, but then, without a word, he tossed the bag at Mel's feet and disappeared into the crowd. Mel quickly grabbed her bag and checked to make sure everything was still inside. "I can't believe that just happened," she said, her voice shaky. "Me neither," I said, still trying to calm my racing heart. We reported the incident to security, but by then, the guy was long gone. We spent the rest of the day trying to laugh it off, but it stuck with me. Who does something like that? Why did he get such a kick out of messing with us? Even now, when I think about it, I get this weird feeling in my gut. It wasn't just about the bag. It felt like he enjoyed the power, like he wanted to see how far he could push us. And that's what scares me the most. Not that it happened, but that people like him exist. People who thrive on control, who turn ordinary moments into something dark and twisted. We never saw him again, but I'll always wonder, what would have happened if we hadn't outsmarted him? It started off like any other shopping trip. I had just finished work, and since I needed a few groceries, I decided to stop by Walmart before heading home. The store wasn't too crowded, just a mix of tired moms, after-work shoppers, and a few kids running around. Nothing unusual. I grabbed a cart, put on my headphones, and scrolled through my list while casually moving through the aisles. It was one of those quiet, uneventful moments that, in hindsight, feels surreal when you realize how quickly things can take a turn. I was somewhere between the dairy section and the cereal aisle when I first noticed him. He wasn't exactly doing anything out of the ordinary at first. Just, standing there, holding a pack of cookies. But something about the way he kept glancing over at me felt a little too deliberate. It wasn't the casual, absent-minded look someone gives when they're just shopping. No, this was different. Almost as if he was sizing me up. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was imagining it. People glance around in stores all the time, right? Still, something about his expression made my skin crawl. I ignored him and kept moving, thinking that was the end of it. A few minutes later, I was in the snacks aisle, debating between two brands of chips when I felt it again. That sense of being watched. I turned my head slightly, and sure enough, there he was. This time, he wasn't even pretending to look at anything on the shelves. He was just standing at the end of the aisle, staring directly at me. My heart did a weird little skip, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe he was waiting for someone or just lost in thought. I grabbed the chips and quickly walked away, hoping he'd stay behind. But as I moved through the next few aisles, I realized he was following me. Not close enough to cause a scene, but close enough that I knew it wasn't a coincidence. At this point, my casual shopping trip was turning into a tense game of act normal, but stay alert. I started taking random turns into different sections, hoping to lose him, but he always reappeared. It was like he knew exactly where I was going. I thought about leaving my cart and heading straight for the exit, but something held me back. Maybe I didn't want to look paranoid. Maybe I thought I was overreacting. Either way, I decided to stay calm and finish up quickly. I was in the frozen food section when he made his move. Out of nowhere, he walked right up to me, standing way too close for comfort. His sudden presence caught me off guard, and I instinctively stepped back. "Hey," he said casually, like we were old friends or something. "Can I get your number?" I stared at him, confused and a little freaked out. He didn't seem drunk or high, just overly confident in a way that felt off. "No," I said firmly, hoping that would be the end of it. But instead of walking away, he leaned in slightly, lowered his voice, and said something that made my stomach turn. "You have nice boobs. The world would be mine if I touched them." I was frozen for a second, caught between shock and disgust. He just smiled at me, like he'd said something completely normal, then turned around and walked off as if nothing had happened. My mind raced. I felt exposed, violated even. I wasn't wearing anything revealing, just a plain t-shirt and jeans, but that didn't seem to matter. The way he spoke, so casually, like he could say whatever he wanted without consequence, left me stunned. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to drop everything and leave, but another part of me was angry. Angry that he thought he could get away with it. angry that he made me feel unsafe in such a public place. I spotted a Walmart employee nearby and hurried over. I didn't want to make a big scene, but I knew I had to report him. The guy didn't deserve to just walk around freely after that. I explained what happened as best as I could, even though my hands were shaking. The employee immediately called over the manager and security. They took my statement and promised to review the camera footage. Meanwhile, another employee walked with me to the front of the store just to make sure I felt safe. I was grateful for that small gesture. As I waited near the entrance, I saw the guy again. He was heading for the exit, looking completely unbothered. He didn't even glance in my direction. The security guard followed him outside, but I never found out what happened after that. Did they confront him? Did he leave before they could do anything? I left Walmart that day, feeling a mix of relief and unease. On one hand, I was glad I reported him. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd done this before, and might do it again. What if he wasn't just some random creep? What if he was watching me from the moment I entered the store, waiting for the right moment to approach? Even now, I wonder about his intentions. Was he just trying to get a reaction? Or did he have something worse in mind? And what would have happened if I hadn't reported him? It's been a while since that day, but I still find myself glancing over my shoulder whenever I'm out shopping alone. I've learned to trust my instincts more, to speak up when something feels wrong. But every now and then, I think back to that encounter and wonder, how many others like him are out there, hiding behind a smile, waiting for the next opportunity to make someone feel small?